The world watched in horror as the conflict in Ukraine escalated. Cities were reduced to rubble, innocent lives were lost. But amidst the devastation, there were glimmers of hope. In May 2022, a rescue operation was underway. Ukrainian soldiers, trapped for weeks in the besieged Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol, were finally offered a way out. Exhausted and wounded, they surrendered to Russian forces. This act was not an act of defeat, but a strategic retreat. The soldiers were evacuated from the devastated Azovstal plant, a symbol of Ukrainian resilience. The hope was that these soldiers would soon be part of a prisoner exchange, a beacon of humanity amidst the brutality of war. If you found this video informative, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Your support helps us uncover the truth. On the night of July 29, 2022, that glimmer of hope was extinguished. A deafening explosion ripped through a detention facility in Olenivka. The facility, a former industrial hangar, housed Ukrainian prisoners of war, many of whom were from the Azovstal steel plant. The blast shook the very foundation of the building, leaving behind a scene of unimaginable carnage. Over 50 Ukrainian prisoners of war lost their lives that night. Many more suffered horrific injuries, their bodies bearing the physical and emotional scars of the blast. The world reeled in shock and disbelief. Families who had clung to the hope of seeing their loved ones return were left devastated. The international community was outraged. The tragedy at Olenivka was not just an attack on Ukrainian soldiers, it was an assault on the very principles of humanity and international law. In the immediate aftermath of the explosion, conflicting narratives emerged. Russia, which controlled the Olenivka facility, claimed that Ukraine had targeted its own soldiers. They alleged that Ukraine had used US-supplied HIMARS rocket systems to strike the facility. Ukraine vehemently denied these accusations, asserting that Russia was responsible for the massacre. They pointed to the lack of damage to the surrounding buildings as evidence that the explosion originated from within the facility itself. The international community was left grappling with these conflicting narratives. The United Nations called for an independent investigation into the incident, but access to the site was restricted by Russian authorities. The lack of transparency fueled suspicion and mistrust, further complicating efforts to uncover the truth about what happened at Olenivka. Despite the challenges, Ukraine has been relentless in its pursuit of justice for the victims of Olenivka. Ukrainian authorities have conducted their own investigations, gathering evidence and interviewing witnesses. They have shared their findings with international partners, seeking support for their claims. Ukraine's investigations have focused on several key pieces of evidence. They have pointed to witness testimonies from survivors of the attack who described hearing a loud explosion from within the building. They have also highlighted the lack of damage to the surrounding buildings, which they argue is inconsistent with a HIMARS rocket strike. The use of such a weapon, if proven, would constitute a grave violation of international humanitarian law. The international community has echoed Ukraine's calls for a thorough and impartial investigation into the Olenivka tragedy. Human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have expressed grave concerns about the incident and the lack of transparency surrounding it. They have called on Russia to grant independent investigators unrestricted access to the site. However, Russia has consistently resisted these calls for an independent investigation. They have denied access to the site to UN investigators and have refused to cooperate with international efforts to uncover the truth. This obstruction of justice has only deepened suspicions about Russia's role in the incident. The lack of accountability for the Olenivka tragedy sets a dangerous precedent. The international community must remain steadfast in its demand for justice for the victims of Olenivka. The tragedy at Olenivka is a stark reminder of the human cost of war. It is a call to action for the international community to uphold its responsibility to protect civilians and prisoners of war. We must remember the victims of Olenivka, the soldiers who endured unimaginable suffering, the families torn apart by loss, the survivors forever marked by the trauma of that night. Their stories must not be forgotten. The international community must remain committed to seeking accountability for the Olenivka tragedy and to preventing such horrors from happening again. We must work together to strengthen international humanitarian law and promote a culture of peace and respect for human rights. Let the memory of Olenivka be a catalyst for positive change. This has been another video presentation from Wow, Interesting. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share this video to spread awareness and support our cause.